Northern Colorado and all other listeners out there, what is up? How's it going? Do you think it would be cool to hear someone give you a shout out for something you've been doing, or maybe just for, heck, being awesome? What if you could spotlight someone else doing great things on this podcast? Now, on our support page of our website, we have shout outs for $10. Support the show and fill out our form about your message. We will begin featuring any shout outs in the intros or the endings of future episodes. Who should we give props to and why? Who has been doing amazing things in our area? Who needs a quick spotlight in Northern Colorado? Let us know at www.themoreyouknow.com/support. Welcome to The More You NoCo, everyone. The podcast bringing you awesome ideas and people from Northern Colorado. When is the last time you told someone about this podcast? Well, you should. I'm Ivan Wayne. Let's get to it. Listener, back in my day, you couldn't go to school and learn how to make beer. But guess what? You can now. I got to stand around some machinery and talk with two of the leaders of the UNC Brewing Sciences Department. They help students through the entire beer making process. It is an awesome program. I'll apologize ahead of time for the poor quality. Something about the room fluctuated our audio for some reason. Anyway, grab a craft beer, sit back, and enjoy our conversation about how all this came to be and Michael and Sean's awesome plans for the future of this program. I stand here in a brewing lab, believe it or not, on the campus of UNC in Greeley. And I stand here today with Michael Mosier and Sean Johnson. So first of all, thank you both. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So we are here, we're going to discuss all different facets of the Brewing Lab Science Department at UNC, which I had heard a little bit about, like back when it started, but then I haven't heard much. So first, what is it and who all can get involved with this?
So the Brewing Lab Science program started about 5 or 6 years ago, where we decided that it would be a great idea to get students involved in a program where they could then graduate and move off into the real world and start working in breweries. So we came up with a program that deals mostly with quality control, quality assurance, and gets students into the lab and then into the brewery and actually teaches them how to brew.
And I was seeing on the website, you craft this in a way, no pun intended, to tailor to people who want to home brew just for fun or people who want to go into a full-fledged brewery career.
Well, the program is not really specifically designed for people who want to homebrew, but the general principles and things that we talk about really do lead right into being a good home brewer as well. We focus on trying to get people into breweries, but like I said, what you learn there is easily applicable to the garage.
Right. And you had mentioned this idea of quality control, quality assurance. So for the lay listener out there, what does that mean?
Well, so when you make beer, you first off start in your garage and you're just hanging out with friends and you make a beer that, you'd think tastes good. And so you start to tweak that recipe time and time again, and eventually you come out with a beer that you are convinced other people would pay money to buy. So what you then have to do is remake that beer over and over and over again. And that's where quality control and quality assurance really comes in. We're not talking as difficult as it may sound for some of the huge breweries out there. There are plenty of quality control and quality assurance aspects that any brewery can kind of put into place that a lot of people just aren't aware about. And what they do is they ensure that when you're making beer, that beer is the same beer, from January to March to June. And there's a variety of factors that can play into that. The grain and hops from year to year change, their composition because they're living materials that are grown out on a farm. The water chemistry from the beginning of the year to middle of the year to end of year may change depending on where the city's getting its water, or, if you are on a well, or if you're, doing some sort of other water purification or something in your own facility. There's all different ways that you can mess with the water, and the water chemistry is very important on how the beer tastes. And then on top of that, there's obvious analysis that we teach the students how to do and that we focus on that include, alcohol and bitterness, IBUs, SRM, which is the color of the beer. We focus on, I think, 34 different ASBC methods in the summer class that the students get to work on in the lab and be familiar with. And so you get a lot of experience on the different instrumentation that you might see in the brewing industry, as well as just a general understanding of what people are talking about. But ultimately, quality control and quality assurance when it comes to the brewing industry is focused around how do we make sure that the beer that everybody loves continues to be that beer that everybody loves, and we don't start to deviate down a path where you start to get a different flavor that may throw off some of your customers. They're expecting one thing that they've fallen in love with. You don't want them to all of a sudden have a completely different flavor in the beer that they're expecting to have, the same it's always been.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you think about a recipe and, this is the beer that I enjoy. This is but to think about how the ingredients might change over time, the taste of one component may alter next season, but the customer's not just going to be like, the taste of my favorite beer has slightly altered. No, that's on the brewery to kind of try to keep that consistent. That's fascinating.
And also the cloudiness of the beer or the haziness of the beer. In some cases, the customer expects the beer to be hazy, and if it's not exactly the same haziness, well, then the quality is not as good. Even though it may taste identical, it has a different appearance, and appearance is part of the overall quality.
Yeah, presentation matters for food and beer alike, right? So is there an age minimum for students to get involved with the brewing lab?
No, at the current way it's set up, this is greatly thanks to some stuff that was done up at the government level. The students are allowed to enroll in our class and do everything in our classes at any age. That has to do with the fact that because we're a university and we're doing collegiate level education and it's a brewing program, that they're able to get kind of a waiver from the laws of the state. What they're allowed to do, if we ever do consume alcohol in classes, they're allowed to taste and spit it. They can't just come to the class and drink and party. That's right. Not how the class is set up, and I don't want it to be set up that way.
Despite what people may think about a brewing science lab.
Yeah, it's not all just drinking and stuff like that. It's actually a lot of stuff and knowledge that while you're trying to study it and remember makes you want to drink, because there's a lot of stuff to cover and a lot of stuff to remember, and it, a lot of things with similar names that get really confusing, and a lot of vessels with different names that you've never heard of before that get very confusing to follow. But no, the class is open to anyone of any age that's interested in just the class. For the minor, the certificate, any of that, we actually have a LAC class being open in the fall this year. That's Brew 170 and Brew 170L, which will satisfy the LAC 6 component at UNC, or the general elective classes that people have to take, but it will fill the science class and a lab. It'll do those classes for the student that they need to get their degree if they are not a science major or need to get their science credits.
Yeah. So those outside of the UNC system who may not know about the LACs, LAC 6, it'll be an introductory course about brewing that students can take to fulfill those elective foundational credits they need to graduate.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah, all students have to take 40 credit hours of what we call liberal arts courses, and this would count for a portion of that.
Yeah. Did y'all have any trouble starting this type of program at a university? Because I feel like this is something, especially, it's just so Coloradan. I remember when I first heard it, like, how is this not already everywhere? I thought it's such a good idea.
Well, when I first started thinking about this before I came to Colorado, and I did have a little bit of resistance in Nebraska where I first started thinking about a program like this. But here in Colorado, it's just been amazing. Here at UNC, everybody's been on board with making sure that we can have a brewing program that gets our graduates to what they need to do or what they want to do when they get done.
Yeah. So we were talking before the recording that there's kind of three main phases to this program that students might go through. So it's like the theory of brewing, then there's lab analysis, and then the last one is pretty cool. It's like implementing this in a brewery, or what this might look like at the business level. Is that right?
Implementing in a brewery setting is the thing to do. So we apply all of the things we've learned from the theory and the laboratory analysis to manufacturing 3 batches of beer in a 3-week period. And we do it at a 7-barrel stage, so it's actually quite a bit of beer that we're making. We use a steam-fired brewery, which is where we're standing right now, and we actually make 210 gallons of beer 3 times in that 3-week period, and apply our quality control, quality assurance, and other methods to the manufacture.
Yeah. that first part, the kind of the introductory brewery theory, what does that involve? That's a realm I don't even know.
So we start that class talking about beer at the very beginning of dawn of time of recorded history. And even at the beginning of recorded history in ancient Chinese texts and, stonework and stuff like that we found, we still find beer that long ago. So beer has been around as long as it seems people have. It didn't take people very long to figure out that if you just leave some grains soaking out in the sun for a couple of weeks, all of a sudden it has some alcohol to it and you can get intoxicated. And people have always found ways to get intoxicated. It's, one of the things that is pretty prevalent in any society is some sort of, intoxication agents or drugs or alcohol or wine. They're prevalent, throughout human history as people have, whether recreationally and, socially approved or whether it's been, kind of on the down low, they've always kind of been around in society. And so when we look at beer, we start all the way back at the very beginning of beer history, as far back as we've been able to find. And then from there, we kind of move up and we start to go through, the BC times and all of that. We go through the early ages of the modern, or I guess it wouldn't be modern era. What would it be?
The Middle Ages. So I would say we cover history of beer all the way from the dawn of civilization to the current day. Talk about how the differences in the recipes have led to the differences in the different styles of beers that we see today. I think that's a good way to say it.
I think that, yeah. And then we talk about beer in, more modern history. And we talk about, Prohibition in America and how that affected the beer industry. We talk about a lot of just really important, significant historical events, like the invention of the can. That was a huge one. Like, before the can, there was not cans to put beer into. And so that was a huge, huge breakthrough for the beer industry. But then we kind of go through all of that, and then we then we move over to the brewing process. So we start from, barley, which is, a seed that's grown out in a farm somewhere. And how do we change that barley to malt? And then the malt to, the brew house. And then what happens to it in the brew house? And all of the chemistry and all of the biology and all of the terminology and all of that you have to know how to do, along with the processes along the way. What are breweries doing to convert barley into beer ultimately? And we talk about hops and all of the stuff going on there. We talk about fermentation. I mean, it's a semester long, so there is a lot of stuff to cover, and luckily we're able to cover a good chunk of it because we're given that semester time frame to kind of cover that theory
in the level of detail too. I mean, we talk about water and water chemistry. We talk about the physics, talk about corrosion. Why do we use stainless steel and not copper? How the process is done, etc. And then we do talk a little bit about quality control and quality assurance in that first semester as well.
Yeah. And half of those students are able to learn all of that online. The students that don't want to do the face-to-face class or aren't in the state or, have other jobs, we do have that first class all is online that people can do it all from home or do it all from wherever. Even if you're at UNC and you just don't want to sit in a lecture room for 50 minutes 3 times a week, you can take all of that stuff for that first class online.
Yeah. And then after that first class, it becomes lab analysis and working in the brewery and
that's right,
getting in the middle of the science.
And we do, I think it's 3 weeks long for each of those second 2 classes, 40 hours a week.
Oh, wow.
So they really get some hands-on use.
Yeah, that's so cool. And then we were kind of talking before the recording that you all have local partnerships with breweries around here.
Oh, yeah, we do a lot of stuff with the local breweries here. One of the most, reoccurring one is we do the Claus collab with Crabtree out at Crabtree Brewing, where students that performed really well on the midterm for this class going on right now get to go out there and work with Jeff out at Crabtree, and they get to basically design a beer. They get to do the brewing process, the marketing process, all of that. They get to do on their own as if they own the brewery. So Jeff has been really awesome out there that he kind of lets these students come in and run the business as if it was theirs for one batch of beer. He obviously supervises to make sure they don't do anything too ridiculous, but he basically lets them come in and, brew a batch of beer. And then some proceeds of that beer are able to go back to the Brewing Laboratory Science program from that collaboration. And it's been a pretty good one. This is actually our 3rd batch of students that we're sending over for this collaboration over there.
That's so cool. And if listeners are fascinated by this, like myself, they can go to Crabtree and get this. Is it on tap right now?
I believe the first 2 collabs are sold out at this point.
Hey, that's a good problem, right?
That's a good problem to have. have. So we're anxiously looking forward to the next one coming up.
And when might that be available at the tap?
Probably early summer. We do have another collaboration that we worked on with Crabtree and Bricks and Rocky Mountain Tap House here locally. The release date for those beers hasn't quite yet been decided, but it should be coming up here relatively soon. So those will be out hopefully in, the next couple weeks, maybe by April, mid-April, sometime end of April. I don't have any idea.
That's cool. Where will that be available?
So that's going to be available at Crabtree, Bricks, and Rocky Mountain Tap House. We brewed a beer at each one where all the breweries kind of got together, and UNC got in there with them, brewed the beers, designed the recipes, did all that fun stuff, and that'll be kind of a whole release party special thing going on as soon as that all gets hammered out on the business side of things.
Yeah, and if anyone in the area is as big of a fan of beeritas at Fuzzy's as I am, they might know that I think it was either late summer or fall of last year, you all had the Claus collab in a special beerita, and I remember when I first saw that, I was like, well...
Yeah, that was the second Claus collab. Went out to Fuzzy's, and they put it into a mango coconut margarita.
Yeah, it was blue and gold.
Yeah, it was
UNC
blue and gold,
colors.
and it was really kind of cool because you could drink your margarita, and then when that was done, well, then the beer was ready to be poured into the glass. It was just amazing to have, or you could mix it all together however you wanted to do it.
Right.
It was actually quite fun and tasted great, by the way.
Yeah, it was awesome. I got more than a handful of them while it was there. Any idea if Fuzzy's going to bring that back this year?
I would hope so. If it was a success for them, I'm hopeful that it will.
Well, if anyone who works at Fuzzy's is listening to this right now, this is my stamp of approval and my plea to bring this back because the beerita was amazing. And we were also talking about how some of the materials and the tanks here in the brewery have been donated by local brews as well.
So the brewery itself wasn't donated by anybody. We got that with the startup of the program. And so the 7 Barrel Brew House in its entirety has been here since the beginning of the program. But recently we have gotten other donations. We've gotten a crowler machine, we've gotten some tap stuff, we've gotten some safety apparel, some signage around, and all of that has just come from the brewing industry and people in the brewing industry that have been willing to help us out and, see the program grow in its entirety.
Yeah, that's neat because WeldWorks is huge and they've been on the show. And I told Colin Jones that they're the real Heisenberg of Greeley. They're the true owners of Greeley. I hope the mayor knows that they're sharing the responsibility with WeldWorks because that place is so huge and influential in the area, I feel.
Well, they've grown significantly since they started, so it's been wonderful having them here.
Right.
Yeah, they really have put the Greeley beer scene on the map. I mean, there's a lot of really good breweries in Greeley, right? I think we're up to 8 or might be 9 now. It's insane how many breweries there are.
Green Earth is the newest one, or is there one since then?
I'm not sure if Green Earth or Rocky Mountain Tap House opened later. I think Rocky Mountain did.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, just great beer going on in the Greeley area. And I do think that WeldWorks has done a good job of getting people into Greeley because they've heard of WeldWorks. And then from there, they can go and visit Wiley Roots and Bricks and Green Earth and Crabtree and all of those other places because they're now here. Mm-hmm. And I think that before it was thought of if you don't go to Fort Collins, you're not going to get any good beer because everything was in Fort Collins. And I think that it's kind of changing and people are starting to realize like, oh, Greeley has some good beer too.
Yeah, and we push the envelope here too. There's experimental brews that are coming out all the time. It's just a wonderful beer scene here in Greeley.
Yeah. What kind of reception have you all had from enrollment and students? Are they just fascinated? They're just like, they can't wait to get started?
We're growing every year. We get a lot of people who are very, very interested in the first class. Some are interested in going on and finishing off their certificate, which is all 3 of the classes. Others are just wanted to know what it was about and just took that first class and said, that was enough for me. I think I'm good enough. And that's fine. That's what we want to do is just raise awareness of what beer is and how to make it and how to make it well.
Right. I think sometimes people, and not to a fault, but sometimes people can underestimate the science behind it or the process behind something. Like many children grow up and they say that they would love to be a video game designer without realizing the time, the 80-hour weeks, the code, and the multiple languages it takes to learn the backdoor process of making a game. And I think maybe the same could be said about brewing.
Oh, yes. I think that the thing that most people don't realize about the brewing industry is how much cleaning you have to do.
Cleaning.
90% of the job is probably just cleaning up after yourself yourself from making beer. The biggest fear to the brewing process or to the beer in general is infection. That's the most, probably I would say, the most common issue that people are afraid of, because you get bacteria into your beer before it ferments, and all of a sudden you have just wasted 200 gallons of beer that you could have sold, and now it has to go down the drain. And so because of that, brewers are very, very meticulous, is that the word?
Yeah.
At cleaning and making sure that everything is free of bacteria 100 times over.
Yeah, I've heard it said that brewing is 10% brewing, 50% paperwork, and 120% cleaning. Just to show that you're cleaning all the time, just to make sure that there's no bacteria where it shouldn't be.
I mean, the listeners obviously can't see this, but you can see the floors in here need to be recoated with some sealant, because the last time we brewed in here, the acid that got on the floor from cleaning chewed up some of the floor cover. So we have to get that done before the summer.
Right. All the little steps it takes to get to work.
Yeah, dust is a bad thing, and bacteria are everywhere. They're what we call ubiquitous. They live everywhere, and they will find a way to live where you don't want them to live. So you have to really watch out for them.
Yeah. What happens when a beer gets infected? Do you just know it when you open the barrel and it tastes awful, or
sometimes?
Sometimes, yes. Other times it takes a little while before you notice it. But if it doesn't taste right, that's usually a sign that something's in the beer that shouldn't be there. If it's sour and it's not supposed to be sour, if it's stringy and it's not supposed to be stringy,
smells like vinegar,
smells like
butter.
vinegar, or smells like rotten eggs or something like that, that's a good sign that there's bacteria in it. If you're a home brewer, you've probably experienced that once or twice.
Yeah.
Most people, I would think, have probably experienced a beer that's got diacetyl in it, which is a buttered popcorn flavor. But I think a lot of people don't really know that it's an off flavor. They'll just drink it and they'll think, oh, it's just kind of creamier, because buttered popcorn is kind of a flavor that's somewhat common for people. And they may just think, oh, that's just what this beer style is. It's supposed to be like a little bit like popcorn. The answer, or the real solution, is very rarely is a beer supposed to taste like that. And it's a very common off flavor that can come from infection, or a beer being too young, or dirty lines that the beer is being poured out of, or a dirty faucet that the beer is being poured out of. It can come from a lot of different places. And it's probably the most common off flavor, I would say, that you experience
It's a really good indicator of bacterial infection.
Yeah. And it's pretty commonly seen, and it's one of the first off flavors that I think people, when they start to really notice it and go to breweries and taste it, they're like, oh, well, that's a bummer. I used to like beer, and now when I taste this one off flavor that, it's not so common that it's like every place you go has it. It's, 1 out of 6, 1 out of 9 breweries that you go to maybe one weekend has it because a beer was too young, or that line just wasn't cleaned properly, or it's just been sitting for a while. But it's definitely one of those things to where I feel, as we're educated more in the brewing process and in beer, it somewhat ruins beer for me, because I used to just chalk it up as, oh, that's just a weird flavor, I'll still drink it. And now I know what it's from, and it kind of puts me off from drinking the rest of the beer.
Yeah. But learning all the science behind brewing doesn't ruin all beer for you.
No, it's made me very interested in beer, very interested in all the different styles out there. And actually, my favorite thing to do is go to places and try a bunch of different styles of beer they brew and see how, to style they fit. So one of my favorite things to do is, go and order a porter and a brown and a red and a Kolsch, and see to myself, how well do those fit to the styles that I'm, familiar with of those beers.
Yeah.
I see.
That's why flights are so good. It's not just because I want to try a little bit of everything, but I actually really want to try a little bit of everything and see, well, what's their interpretation of a Goza? What's their interpretation of a pale ale? And it really is kind of interesting to kind of compare that to what we teach or what we learn from taking the classes.
Yeah, you get to try more in a shorter amount of time. So not only do you offer a certificate, but you also allow students to minor in brewing, which I think is super neat.
Mm-hmm. That is true. We do have, for those students who want to do more than just a certificate and that are maybe getting a major here on campus, they can get a minor, which would be the 3 classes that would be common in the certificate, plus 3 additional classes to round out the credit hours needed for the minor. Part of those classes could also be an internship where they would go off and work in one of the breweries in the local area or the regional area and then apply those credits back to the minor.
Yeah, I was going to ask about internships. Like, this is another sweet partnership you all have that students can get internship credit by working in and experiencing local breweries.
And it really sets them up for success, too, because what they're looking for is not just how do we do it in the lab, but how does a brewery do it out in the real world, and then applying what they know from us to that and seeing how it all meshes together.
Yeah.
Well, and what I focus, or what I want to see out of the internships, too, that we send our students on, is the hardest part of any industry is just getting into the industry. You know, if you don't know the people in the industry, you don't have any contacts, it's always hard. Your first job is always the hardest to find. And by doing the internships, you, if nothing else, get contacts in the brewing industry. Now, the great part about that is that no matter what industry you work in, I guarantee you there's people in it that drink beer. And so by knowing the brewer, or by knowing the brewery and the brewing process and all of that, often by working the bar and being the bartender, you meet a lot of people from a lot of different industries. And so whether your, focus is marketing or accounting or, sports and exercise science or chemistry, while drinking beer and serving beer, you meet people that are in these professions too. So the brewing industry is a really nice mesh of a lot of different industries as well, because at the end of the day, a lot of people like beer regardless of what their professions are. And it's a good way to meet a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds.
That's a stellar point I've never considered. In addition to this, you also have study abroad opportunities in partnership with places in England?
Actually, we've got our first study abroad coming up this summer. We've tried to do study abroad a couple summers before, but just didn't have the students sign up for it. It occurs at a weird time in late July, and that seems to be part of the reason. That and a chemistry prefix on the course that goes along with it is probably making people want to run away. Yes, it is. Chemistry is the department that houses the brewing program, but that's not what the course is about. It's about brewing, not about chemistry.
Yeah. Well, and come fall 2019, all of the prefixes are changing. We're going to be a brew prefix instead of a chem prefix. So if students are looking for the classes, they're now going to be under, on the sign up, they're going to be under BREW instead of chem. So hopefully that's a little less scary and a little less threatening to enroll for.
But we're interested in taking students over to England and to other countries to learn about the brewing industry in other countries. How is beer brewed in London? What is the culture around beer and drinking in the pub setting, which is totally different than it is here in the United States.
Yeah, that is just so cool. Like, all of this, I knew nothing about it walking in here, and this is just neat. And then we were also talking about, and something I'm personally excited for, is you were talking to me about some future plans here on campus, not only with being able to brew here, but then possibly some sort of way to have this brew sold on campus.
Yeah, so we are working with the university. There is nothing that's set in stone yet, but the plan is to have the brewery down in Parsons Hall open up and be able to do crowler sales on site. So you could come down after work or after studying or, whatever, as long as you're 21, and come down and get beer from the UNC brewery. The goal for that brewery would be to be nonprofit and have the brewery focus on making UNC better. It would be, all of the proceeds that could be sent to UNC would be sent that way to help improve not just the brewing program, but plenty of other programs across campus as well that might benefit from the brewery being on campus. So there's still a lot of work to be done on that end of things, but the outlook is promising, and I think that hopefully sometime in 2019 we'll see that come to fruition and we'll actually have that brewery on campus, and then we can start maybe talking about getting a tap room on campus once we've got the actual brewery up and running.
Right.
And once the brewery is up and running, we will be able to sell kegs to dining services so that beer would be available wherever they would like to sell it, such as at a football game or a basketball game or at a special event someplace on campus.
And then people could buy alcohol and support a UNC program and support the school in general. I think
that's right.
That's so neat. And so if people, and I suspect they will be, if people are interested and they would like to know more about this program, contact you, and maybe they're a UNC student and they think, my minor is not as cool as brewing, how might they get in contact with you all or your program?
Well, the easiest is just email brewing@unco.edu. That email will go straight to us, and we can answer any questions that way. We also have a website with Extended Campus that's extended.unco.edu/brewing that has a lot of information about the program as well. Or if they're not interested in the minor or the certificate at all and just want to drink beer, we do offer monthly beer classes for $30. So the last Monday of every month from 6 to 9-ish p.m., we have a beer class on campus. We've already had a few where in January we had Carrie from Dreads Brewing come out. In February we had Nick from Loveland Ale Works come out and talk with us. This month we have Kirk from Zwei coming. So each month I try to get a topic in the beer industry and then have a brewery come out and talk and give a little bit of their opinion on the whole scene of it and how everything's going, so that for $30 you can show up, usually bring at least 10 different beers to try, and just talk to some people in the industry and just kind of hang out. It's almost like a beer club that you sign up for, that you get to show up and drink beer and enjoy different beers every month.
Well, heck yeah, this has been awesome, and thank you both for your time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoy The More You Know Co., please check out our other episodes. We've had such a variety of interesting and awesome people, you never know what you're going to find. I've been in awe and wonder going on this journey around northern Colorado. Read the episode descriptions, take a shot, and discover our NoCo community. Trevor Fossey, always putting in the time to edit and mix these episodes. Thank you so much for your dedication and hard work. Russell Isaac Long, our guest on episode 67 of the show, makes all our music here at The More You Know Co. Thank you, good sir. We are on Facebook and Instagram if you're interested in staying connected with us, or just to see bonus visual content in addition to this very audio-driven podcast experience. We will be back soon with another conversation, exploring and connecting the people who make up Northern Colorado. Until next time, peace!